Thank you for coming back after doing that difficult exercise before lunch. What we're going to do now is easier comparatively to what we did before lunch. We're going to make two star patterns, and the first one we're going to make is this one. And the nice thing about this one, I think, is that you can use it in a composition, but it's also very nice just to use as a star on its own. So it has some nice, hopefully, design opportunities if you wanted to do something with that later on. We're going to do two star patterns today. Or in this session. This morning we did a star pattern that fits in a square. Remember? So that's based on a circle that's divided into 4 or 8 equal sections. What you have in front of you now, you can see hopefully that this is a circle divided into. You want another one? Does everybody have this? No. No? Okay. So how many sections? It's a circle divided into 12 sections. It's a circle divided into 12 sections. And that star is going to fit into that circle. Okay. So this is the star pattern that you're going to make. It's the one that we just saw. And we can do it in the same way that we did it before lunch. So it's a step-by-step approach. Again, you don't need to make any measurements. You just connect an intersection of a circle and a line, or an intersection of a line and a line. If you're measuring, then you're doing it wrong. So once again, you need three things. You need your ruler, you need a pencil, and you need a pen for contrasting color. Okay?
Shall we start?
Start what?
Yeah. Doing the other stuff. We are finished.
You're finished? Okay, so this is what you have. So we don't have to do this. Of course, if you were doing it at home and you didn't take one of those templates home, you would draw a circle and then divide it into 12 equal sections, which is not so difficult to do. So I've left some lines out here, but please ignore that. So draw two triangles, one like that, and then one like that. That's the first step. Yeah, just do what I'm doing. Yeah. Okay, sorry. You've already got those lines because I gave you a particular template. So we'll go on to the next one. Right. So the next step is you draw the same two triangles again, but then using the intersections that you haven't used yet, if you see what I mean. So a triangle like that and a triangle like that. Reza Sarhangi this morning was talking about mathematics and geometry and how they're closely related. You could see this in the four triangles that you've drawn now. So you've drawn a circle divided into 12. You've drawn 4 triangles. If a triangle represents 3, then 4 times 3 is 12. What other ways could you multiply to get to 12? Instead of 4 by 3, what we've done now, you could also do 3 by 4. We're not going to do that today, but you can try that if you take one of these at home. So 3 by 4 would be 3 squares. 3 squares also fit into a circle divided by 12. And if you do 3 squares instead of 4 triangles, then you create a foundation for a whole bunch of other patterns. Try that. Well, don't try it now, but try it later. It's
Two hexagons for the 12 star?
yes. So exactly. So the other way to multiply to get to 12, well, two other ways, of course, but the most obvious one is 2 times 6. It's also 12. So if you did that, then you would do that, and you would do that, which also creates a star pattern, which also forms the basis for another group of geometrical patterns. And if you think about at the beginning of Reza's presentation this morning, he showed a star pattern which had a 12-pointed star pattern, and he showed it in a square, and he showed it in a grid of squares like this, and he showed the same pattern, or more or less the same pattern, in a grid of hexagons. Do you remember that? And the reason that is possible is because of the fact that 12 can be 4 times 3 or 3 times 4. So that duality enables you to make 12-pointed patterns, or 12-fold patterns, quite often in a grid of squares or in a grid of hexagons. Both work because of that reason. Okay? Right. So now, inside what you have already drawn, you're going to draw this. But have a look before you start drawing, because there are a couple of intersections you could choose from, but you have to choose the right ones. So the best way to do it is to draw little circles where I've drawn my little squares. But then have a look at this shape. Yeah? So if you focus on this shape, then you draw your little circle at the bottom of that shape. That's an easy way to do it, I find. This little shape, and then on that corner you draw a little circle. Once you've drawn 6 circles, then you can draw your 2 triangles to fit into that.
Do you have paper?
This one goes like that. No, so the next step. This method of construction is a very common second step if you're doing a geometrical pattern that's based on 2 overlapping triangles, and you'll see why. But once again, make some little circles where I've got my squares, and you can see that you've got this hexagon in here. You've made this hexagon because of the 2 overlapping triangles that you've just drawn. On the corners of the hexagon, make your little circles.
I'm all lost.
If you're finding that, make sure it's aligned in the same way, that you've got your star at the top. Sometimes that's confusing. Or make sure you've got it the right way. Yes, yeah. Yes. So when you draw the lines, make sure that they extend far enough. They don't have to go too far, but they have to extend a little bit this far, because you need them to at least reach this line.
Where am I going to make the lines?
Has everybody got that? Yeah? All right. So this is it. These are all the lines, all the construction lines that you need to draw. So it's not very many steps to create something which, in the context of a composition, looks quite complex. So all the black lines have been drawn now. So now you can take a different pen, and now we're going to do the fun bit, which is actually making the star pattern. Okay? So there's different ways that you can choose to draw these lines. I've done it in a way that I think is easy, or easiest. But of course there's a variety of ways you can do it. I'll show you again what it needs to look like, so do it in any way you want. This is what it's going to look like. So can you recognize what you've drawn? You know, the last step that we did, that's what you've just been doing, okay? So let's go to the first step of the red lines. Here we go. I've chosen this because it also shows you what other interesting shapes you can create that you might want to use in something new that you want to try and make. So draw this tri-lobe thing.
That's right.
Yeah, but you need to...
Erase that one.
Yeah, but that's fine. You do like this. Now, easy. Draw this star. This star doesn't connect to anything yet. Just draw it like that. Make sure you've got it the right way around, by the way. Make sure you've got your little hexagon at the top, rather than two hexagons at the top, if you see what I mean. Make sure that you have that in the right orientation before you start now. Okay? Otherwise it doesn't work.
The same color?
So this pattern really works well as a standalone pattern. For people who were at my presentation yesterday, you might remember that on the slide at the beginning of my presentation I had a big red star that I'd made from MDF and that I painted. That's this design. So I want to show you what you could do with this star. Of course, as I said, you can treat it as a star on its own and hang it on the wall, for example, if you were to make it. But because it's made in a six-fold geometrical pattern, you could tessellate it in a hexagon, like I said. And if you do that, there are a variety of options. This, for example. So these are two different options. This is your star. This is the one you've made. And these are two ways that you could connect them. This is the conventional way, which would happen if you were all to cut out your star pattern in a hexagon and you all placed them next together. You would create this, which in itself is really nice. It creates this nice tri-lobed element here. What I've done with this one, can anybody see what is the difference between this and this? It's this little star, isn't it? So what I've done here, I've connected these lines to create a little star here, just to make it a bit more interesting. And if you do that, then you create smaller shapes, which is also nice. And you create an extra visual element, which is this little six-pointed star, which is also nice. So you have options on what you could do with that. So now you can make something like this. When you go home, you can try this. Try it in a hexagon, or make a grid for yourself. Don't make the paper too small. And then you draw one, and then you draw a few more, and then it all joins up together nicely. Yep. All right. So this morning we did a four-fold pattern. We've just done a six-fold pattern. Logically, the next one we will do, the last one we will do, is a five-fold pattern. So you can put the one that you've just done, put it to one side, and you can always finish it a bit more if you want later. I've given you this piece of paper now. So it looks similar, but it's different from what you had.
Eric, can you explain what you mean by fivefold?
Yeah, so exactly. So this is a circle divided into 10 equal portions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What you had before, what we've done now, is a circle divided into 12 equal portions, and then we saw you can do 3 times 4, 4 times 3. Quite a lot of the presentations that we've had yesterday and this morning, we're focusing on five-fold geometrical design because it's considered to be, well, it is more difficult. Five-fold patterns behave differently. You can't just tessellate it. You can't put in the same, well, you can put squares next to each other. You can put hexagons next to each other. You can't put pentagons, five-fold shapes next to each other. You need to do something extra. So there have been quite a few presentations about that so far, because for people who are interested in Islamic geometrical design, craftsmen and also academics, fivefold geometrical design is difficult but also the most challenging. And you can see that over the centuries, craftsmen in many cultures or many eras, like Seljuk craftsmen, Ottoman craftsmen, Mamluk craftsmen in Egypt, and many others, they loved the challenge that fivefold geometrical design poses because it's so different. And it'll be fun to try something. I'm not going to talk about how you can fill a surface, how you can tessellate, because we'll leave that to other people. But I do want to make a 10-pointed star because it's a nice exercise, and it'll be nice to be able to say that at the end of this day you've done a fourfold pattern, a sixfold pattern, and a fivefold pattern, just so that it's that you're acquainted with that. Okay. So the pattern that we're going to make, or the star pattern, it's another star pattern because it's nice to make as a standalone object, even though you could also use it in a bigger pattern if you wanted to. Right. It's this one. You can see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah? And what I like about this pattern is it's one line really, it's a loop. So you can see it goes you see that? It's just one line, but it overlaps itself, which as a design is quite interesting and quite unusual as well. And of course, if you wanted to do something extra with it, it's very nice to do this particular design with double bands, where the one goes under, the other one goes over, the other one goes under and over. Visually, it's really nice. Okay? I don't know what this. Right, so this is what you have in front of you. Make sure that you put it so that there's a vertical line like that.
Can you please just put a flash between the first line?
There. Yeah, so that's the one we're making. So the first thing that we're going to draw is a 5-pointed star, like this one. This is a good exercise to do anyway, because this is a very familiar star, of course, on many, flags for a start, but of course it's also a traditional 5-pointed star. So the next step is to draw the same star again, but then upside down. Maybe you can see a pattern, if you pardon the expression, between the 6-pointed star that we drew earlier, where you draw a triangle, another upside down triangle. That's quite a common way to start a geometrical composition, that you start drawing a star and then another star upside down on top of it. And then that forms your basis for a whole range of different patterns. Already at this stage you could say, right, my pattern is finished, because you've already created quite a nice star if you look at what you've got on the paper. You've got a 10-pointed star here. You've got these nice little kite shapes here. You've got these rays here. You can already make quite a nice geometrical composition just after these two first steps. You could you could stop here and say, this is something I can already turn into a composition. So now, this is the star that Reza showed in his presentation, that he had this little animation where you saw these lines going all around. That's what you have to draw. The easy way to do it is to skip 2. So start here, skip 1, skip 2, that one. Skip 1, skip 2, that one. And just do that until the lines meet again. That's the simple way to do it. Yeah? So start anywhere. And then think, okay, my line is starting here and my line is finishing after it skipped 2 intersections. Skip 1, skip 2, and then it connects to there. Skip 1, skip 2, connect to there. And then just keep going until all these intersections have been done. Does that make sense? So just count it. No. So when I mean skip, basically I mean start here, no, no, yes. No, no, yes. Yeah, if you see what I mean. So just count it out. So once again, this is it. These are all the construction lines you need. So that's 3 steps. 1 star like this, another star like that, 1 star like that, and that gives you all the lines you need to make, let's have a look at it again, to make this. That's really all you need. So I'll show you what's next. So now take your pen, and once again there's lots of different ways that you can draw this pattern. I'll show you again what it's supposed to look like so you've got it in your mind. This is what you don't have to draw any extra lines. This is what you have, all the construction lines to make this. One way I like to do it is to do this and then turn my page a bit, then do that, turn my page a bit, and then gradually everything connects. But make sure that you do it right. Make sure that you start in the right place, end in the right place. Okay, so these are the same length, and then you've got one long one that goes right up to here, and another long one that goes right up to there. This is the tricky bit. Another way, if you want another way, you can also first do these things. So just do this bit first if you want. That's another way to do it if you find that easier, and then you've got some lines to connect to, if you see what I mean. Yeah, so if you wanted to, instead of doing this, you could just do these 2 first, and then those 2, and then those 2, and then those 2, all the way around. That would be another way to do it. I'll show you the finished one on the screen. Okay, so this is what it has to look like. But with any complex pattern, don't think too much about it. Just do it bit by bit, and then it'll happen by itself. That's it. Okay, well, we're almost finished. We're almost run out of time as well. Like I said, if you want to take any of these templates that we use today, please take them, because we don't need to keep them here. What I want to show you before we finish is a version of what you've done. It's a little bit different because these shapes are a little bit longer, but you can see the principle is the same. It's a 10-pointed star that consists of one interlacing or one looping band. This is from the Mustansariya Madrasa in Baghdad, which has lots of fantastic patterns. Lots. I think it needs to be 90 degrees like that, actually, judging by what that looks like. Anyway, this is the same principle. This is essentially what you've made. Like I said, yours is slightly different proportion, but who cares? And then the last picture is a bit of a test, really. So this is the one you've made, and this is something else. So can you see the difference between these? You could also make, from the same construction lines, you could also make this. It just depends which parts of the construction lines you choose. So, but the characteristic of these 2 designs is very different, because you can see this one loops. It's just one circle that's looping on itself. This one is all discrete little kite shapes that only connect with themselves. and then they make this 10-pointed star of intersecting kite shapes. The only difference is this little bit. If you, instead of, you remember you were drawing this. If you didn't draw that, if you only drew this, then you would get that. So by using the same construction lines, you just have to choose, do I want to draw this one or do I want to draw that one? And the difference is very small, but significant, because this kind of pattern, this kind of star pattern is used a lot, especially by Mamluk craftsmen in Cairo, because it allows you to, it's easy to manipulate. Like the Seljuks, the Mamluk craftsmen like to make very complex compositions, combining 7-pointed stars with 12-pointed stars and 10-pointed stars. To do that, you have to push things a little bit. And not cheat, but you have to tweak things a little bit. This is very easy to tweak, because you can make this a bit longer, you can pull it out a little bit. It'll still work as a star pattern, but you can stretch it or push it, and it won't affect the total star pattern. You can't do that here, because if you make one side a bit longer, it's not balanced anymore. But the craftsmen who made the most complex compositions were very enthusiastic about kite shapes, because even if you make them longer, they still look like kite shapes. They still work. And that's why this is very versatile. And that's why in a lot of minbars in Cairo, Mamluk minbars, you will see lots of these kite shapes, sometimes in a group of 10, sometimes in a different group. But they liked to use them because it allows them to tweak, to play with the composition while still keeping it all connected. So, thank you. So you've done 4-fold pattern, 6-fold pattern, 5-fold pattern. As you can see, then you don't need to do a lot of construction lines. Sometimes 3 steps, 4 steps is enough, and then you already have the lines you need to make a pattern. So things look complex, but they're not, well, they're not that complex really if you know what to do or how to do it. So, thank you. Questions?